Welcome to Soul Awakening TV. This is our very first live episode, and we are so excited to be here. My name is Antler.
And I'm King Gabriel.
And we were talking earlier today about what would be a great first topic to present to you guys so that you get to know us a little bit more as we take this journey together. And then something that would also have a lot of punch and give you a lot of value, and something that will totally rock your socks off. And for both of us, we're so passionate about the universal laws. And so today we thought we would start with a really powerful law, which is called the law of rhythm.
Yep.
And I would love for you just to read to them what that is. What is the law of rhythm? So that we all have an understanding, a base foundation to start from, and then we're going to move from there.
Okay, here I go. The law of rhythm. Everything vibrates and moves to certain rhythms. The rhythms establish seasons, cycles, stages of development, and patterns. Each cycle reflects the regularity of the universe. Everything flows out and in. Everything has tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the left is the measure of the swing to the right. Rhythm compensates.
So the law of rhythm, how I understand it then, because I've read some really cool books, and I have one here that I'd like to share with you guys. It's called the Kabbalion.
I've read it
and I don't know if you can see that through the light, but it's called the Kabbalion. And it's one of my favorite little books. It's a very thin book, but it talks about these universal laws, and it talks about how they influence our life, how we can master those universal laws so that we're not affected so much by them, right? What was your experience when you first read the Kabbalion?
Well, I would say this was a major shifting work for me. It was a period in my life where I was really stepping into my journey even further. And I read the laws, I was practicing them for a while, and then everything changed. Like, everything changed. Had a fire, lost some stuff, some material stuff, but at the same time, learned so much of applying the laws that it was ridiculous. I felt free, liberated, like never before. So I would say that the book is it's amazing. It's transformative, definitely.
That's amazing. And see, that's what we want to bring forward to you. With Soul Awakening, we want everything that we're bringing, from the teachings to the tools that you can put into place into your daily life, is really to create that freedom, right? To be able to connect to whatever it is that you believe in that higher level, but also to feel free in your daily living, because that's what we're here doing, right? We're these incredible expanded beings in these earth suits, having a very physical experience at times, and we want to feel free. We want to feel liberated. So I love that you had that experience.
Indeed.
Maybe what we can do is the both of us will share what our personal understanding is of what the law of rhythm is to us, and maybe how that applies. So do you want to start with what your understanding is first?
You know what, before we go into that, what was your experience of reading it as well?
Oh, my experience of the Kabbalion. You know, it was interesting how it popped into my life. I had a friend from LA, that's where we were living at the time, and we were just talking about, you know, different things that affected our life, universal influences, and this book happened to fall into my lap. And so I read it, and, you know, it made sense. It brought a lot of awareness to me on a conceptual level as to what these universal laws were, and how I didn't have to be, I guess, a victim to them, that I could actually do something about it and change what my reaction or my response was to these universal laws that were kind of playing in my life anyway. So I found it very empowering, actually. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So your next question.
Oh, yeah. So we could share about how you relate to the law of rhythm and what that means to you.
Lovely. So the law of rhythm reminds me of a pendulum instantly, because the swing to the left, and I just happen to have a little one here handy, the swing to the left is the swing to the right. Rhythm compensates. So for me, it feels like as far as it swings to this side is exactly how far it's going to swing to the other. If you're extremely happy and in a wonderful state one day, it'll swing straight to the other side as well, right? Now, the thing about that I find most important is that not so much that we should be obsessed about whether we're happy or sad or anything like that, but the universe itself, the substance that it's made out of, is in flux. It's always vibrating, always changing. And so we can depend on that change. That change is going to happen. Right? And when that change happens, if we're attached to a specific thing being a specific way, and it changes, then we change with it as well, right? Our emotion about it or our feeling about it changes because it changes. So when we can realize that that physical universe, or as we see it, the physical universe is going to change, and we can depend on that, then we can use the law, understanding the law, as a way to stop ourselves from suffering when that change happens. We realize that that's the physical universe. It's going to change. We expect it to change. No big deal when it changes. That's what's supposed to happen. But we realize that we're not stuck in that physical universe. We can rise above that swing of the pendulum that we're speaking about. And in that way, we become creators and not fall under the effects of the world shifting. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I love that. And how I see it is everything has its cycle. Everything has a rhythm to it. You know, here in Canada right now, it's April. And so we're going through this transition and this change from winter into spring, and hopefully soon enough, spring into summer as the weather starts getting warmer. But there are these natural cycles that happen in the world. There's these rhythmic effects that happen in the world, right? You think about the seasons changing from one season to the next, the rhythm that happens as a result of that. And oftentimes the rhythms that we feel while those things are happening, right? Like even for me today, over the weekend, it was really beautiful. It was sunny. It felt like a warm spring day. It was like the layers were coming off. You know, we felt really good. And then today it's very cloudy. It's a little bit cool. It's been rainy. And so most people, because I went to the coffee shop earlier and people were just like, you know, whereas yesterday, if I would have seen them, everybody was like, yeah, it feels so great outside.
Great,
yeah, you know,
that.
and it's sometimes the weather can affect us. And you hear that a lot, right? People talk about how the weather and the seasons affect how we feel and how we are. And so I notice myself being affected by that too sometimes. But then I also know in behind the scenes that I have a choice. I can allow the weather to affect me and to bring me down and to have me feeling kind of slumpy. Or I can recognize that, hey, this is just another day. I can rise above that, like you were saying, rise above those tides, or not be affected so much by that, you know, swinging pendulum, feeling really happy on one day and then feeling like, oh, you know, it's the worst day in the world. I can recognize that there's still greatness to this day. I can find all the beauty in it, which allows me to rise up out of those cycles. So I see there's natural cycles, there's the seasonal cycles, there's moon cycles, especially as women. I feel very much in tune to those. I can feel when the full moon's coming because I'm like, wow, full of energy. And I can feel when...
I feel your sister.
Right, yeah, he would know. And then also when there's the new moon, I kind of feel a little bit more quiet. I feel a little bit more withdrawn, you know, because it's the waxing and the waning of the moons, which actually affect the oceans too, right? There's that swelling and then there's the shrinking down. So I feel that cycle or that rhythm. And we were talking earlier about even our own heartbeat, right? Inside of us, our heart has a natural rhythm, and it continues that rhythm until the day you depart this physical body. So everywhere you look, if you look in life around us, you will see this law at play. You will see the way the earth moves around the sun. There's a rhythm there. Then you've got the rhythm of how the moon moves around the earth. Then you've got how our world moves around us, right? And I say this to clients all the time about the revolving door effect, right? People always get worked up and they're like, oh my God, I feel like I missed a really great opportunity. It's never going to come back around again. Or, you know, that ship has sailed, or whatever that the statement is. But I like to say to people that life is like a revolving door. It comes back around. If you are truly meant to have that experience, that door, that opening will come back around. And if you miss it or you choose not to step on board at this particular time, no big deal. It's going to circle back around again. Just give it some time. And I bet if you looked into your own individual life, you would see cycles that repeat themselves, right? We're kind of going through a cycle right now too. Last year, around this same time, the owners of the house said, hey, we're going to put the house up for sale. So we went through this whole thing, you know, we had to show the house, and it didn't end up selling, but here we are a full year later and the exact same thing is happening. And you said something interesting to me today when we were talking about this. I said, notice how we're in a cycle, the same cycle has repeated itself. So we have an opportunity to jump and to do our next thing. And you said something like, is it the cycle that's repeating itself around us? Or what was it you said?
I think I said,
yeah.
I said that, is it the cycle are we repeating the cycle? Because you said we're repeating the same cycle. Are we repeating the cycle, or is the cycle repeating itself? Is it happening? Is the same event happening? And that's a distinction, I believe, because we can look at things as if we're all involved in it and, well, things are happening to us in a sense again. Or we can look at it as, okay, events are happening, and this is the same law of rhythm again, rising above the thing that's happening and recognizing, okay, that's happening. doesn't mean that we have to take the emotional ride that's happening there too, right? We don't have to take that ride. We can watch it and be like, okay, that event is taking place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I will admit that I'm quick to be on that emotional wave. You know, I can get all way worked up about it because I was like, okay, here we are, we're moving, you know, now this thing is happening, and I can easily get caught into that wave. And then I have to realize, and you're really great at being able to help me see that, is that sometimes I get caught in that wave, that rhythmic wave where I'm like the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows. And then all of a sudden I recognize, hey, you know what, this isn't feeling so good anymore. I'm not really enjoying watching those rhythmic cycles happen like that, because it has an effect, right? Like you were talking about the extreme from one end to the other. And we were talking about excitement, right? Allowing ourselves to get excited. And I can easily get excited about things. But I also know that there's healthy excitement, but then there's also over-excitement. And that over-excitement is so close to anxiety that it throws people over the edge. And so it's for us to be mindful, right? When we're creating in the world, when we're experiencing life, when we want certain amazing things to happen, of course it's natural for us to feel happy and to get excited about it. But it's to know that that excitement exists within you first. It's not necessarily the thing that's come, and sometimes it feels that way, something happens and then we respond. But it's to know deeper than that, that those feelings, whatever it is that we have, exists already within us. That thing is just magnifying what's already within you. That's my way, anyways, of being able to move out of that rhythm or being affected by those cycles that happen. Because if I can recognize, hey, I'm the one that's happy, I'm the one that's excited, I'm the one that gets to feel whatever it is, I'm the one that gets to feel sad if I want to in a day. Then it's not necessarily the things that happen out here that are influencing me or causing that to happen, as you know, there is a law of cause and effect, but that I get to choose. And I think that's a really powerful conversation.
Yeah, I see that. And I like how you said that, right? I see the world too, as since it's in flux, we can say that the world it's not a solid, steady thing. It's in vibration, it's always changing, everything is always changing. We all agree on that right now, right? And so that flux that's happening is definitely going to happen. We could invest in it being that way and act as if it's going to stay that way, but that will only cause us pain because it's guaranteed to change, right? So that's how we kind of get up out of that. And I love that. I love what you were talking about right there in saying that for you, you take the ride and you feel like you live in, you get really excited, and then you sometimes have really low lows to accomplish it, right? And the thing about it is on mastery of this, and this is how we look at it at least, right? The teachings look at it this way. There's a center point where you don't allow yourself to get super excited or uber excited, as some would say, or really low either, right? You stay the middle path, and the middle path might seem to some people like, well, all life is so boring, I can't get excited about anything. No, it's not. It's not really like that. What happens is the internal joy that you feel is so much greater than anything that you can react with the world to recognize, because the world is not an is, as we said, right? The world shows up as how we are. So the world tells us how we are, really. That's what's happening. So there we interact with something and we feel a certain feeling. We had that feeling inside, just as you said before, but the world is showing us what we're feeling. So then we can watch that and be like, oh, that's what I'm feeling. Good. And we can feel good still. We can still feel in a vibe. We almost feel in vibrational alignment with what we witness. That's what it is. That's the best description of it. So then when we're in alignment with that, it's not like we have to be like, oh, this is amazing. We can be like, oh, this is lovely. And we can feel that feeling fully without having to, yay!
Although that feels really
that feels
good
too. That does feel good too. We totally agree. But right there, when we keep that middle path, then the swing on the other side is not as much. And we still get to feel good. We get to feel in alignment. And we recognize ourselves. And more, what starts happening is we start shifting out of the world of the back and forth. And we rise to recognize that these things are expected. They're normal. They're natural. And better things start happening to us more and more because we can appreciate it in a way that's not harmful to us anymore.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we like to bring forward in these shows is what's called the soul awakening moment. And so we decided today that I would share a story about what my soul awakening moment is and what that really is. And you'll see once we start having guests on the show as well, we're going to talk to them and I'll also ask them what's their soul awakening moment. So it's kind of like that aha moment, that awakening, that insightful moment where you take a teaching and you have the experiential of it, right? Because it's one thing to have the teaching and to have the concepts, which are really fantastic. It's amazing to have all those beautiful teachings out there in the world, but then to have the experiential part of it, that's the golden piece right there.
Indeed,
that's when you really get to, have that experience, because that's truly embodying what those teachings are. They're not a conceptual thing anymore. They're real. They've happened, right? And so I would say the closest thing was actually today. You know, I yesterday I could feel there was a little shift in the energy, and I didn't know really what was happening. We just found out yesterday that the house was going to be put up for sale. So that I could see that there was this rhythm. I didn't recognize it until today, but something was happening, you know, and this is what usually happens in life. We're going about our day-to-day business. We're feeling one way or the other, happy, sad, good, not so good, wherever we're at, it's okay. And so I was noticing that I was actually feeling really great. And then yesterday happened, and it kind of threw me off. It was like, what just happened, you know? And then I could feel this cycle starting again. And when I stopped and paused long enough, I recognized, and I think that's a key thing, is for us to pause for a moment and recognize that there are these cycles that happen in our life, and it's okay. It's totally normal. And to not get so pulled into them that we feel like a victim, or we feel like we can't do anything about it, or we feel totally disempowered, right? Because someone could have that experience from yesterday, right? Someone, all of a sudden you're going about your business, you're enjoying life, you're enjoying your house, you're enjoying where you live, you're enjoying all the different aspects, and all of a sudden your landlord say, hey, we're selling the house. And it may sell in a month, it may sell in 2, it may sell in 3, we have no idea. And some people could have the reaction and be like, holy crap, what's going on? And it could be a negative reaction, it could be sadness, and it's like attachment to the house, attachment to this world, attachment to this life. All those different things could come up, which would have a certain response internally for you as well. Or we could look at it, which is what we did. We said, okay, we recognize this cycle has come around again, whether it's happening to us or we're a part of it or whatever. There's a cycle that's present. Now we get to choose and decide where we want to be on that cycle. So we jump on board and we're like, okay, cool. This is part of change. Change is always happening around us, like you mentioned already. Change is a natural part of living. It's a natural part of our experience here. So I decided to get on board with change being okay. And in that space, then all of a sudden I was like, okay, there's momentum. Then the next steps start to show up. So in that cycle of rhythm, in that cycle of change, the next steps begin to present. It's like, okay, now let's search for another place. You know, but even today when I woke up, I did feel, and maybe it was the weather that, you know, all of a sudden threw a little in it for me, but I recognized for myself that I needed to go and do something that allowed me to feel connected to my joy, because that's my natural state. That's where I like to be. I like to feel happy. I like to feel at ease. I like to feel in a pleasant state. And so one of the simplest things for me, and this is where you guys get to discover this for yourself, I would say make a list of all the things, or note in your mind all the things that bring you joy, that bring happiness, that have you feeling a sense of peace internally, just from the simplest of things. It doesn't have to be something extravagant, but from the simplest of things. And for me, it was going to Starbucks and getting an Americano with vanilla and some cream. And so I was like, I'm going to go for a drive. Because on that drive, I get to just be in my car, which I love being in my car. I'll listen to some music. I'll get to Starbucks. I'll see some friendly faces. I'll order my coffee. I'll sit down for a few minutes, and I'll just be present. I'll be present to how good that coffee tastes. I'll be present to the atmosphere and how much I love that. I'll be present to how I just feel in that moment. And within seconds of that happening, whoop, I felt myself lift up out of whatever this rhythmic thing is. Because sometimes those rhythms can stir up fear, doubt, overwhelm, confusion, all those things. Oh my God, this cycle's repeating itself, or oh my God, it's overwhelming, I don't know what to do next. And that can really pull us out of our center, right? So we want to stay in an awakened state about this. So today, that was my experience. I was able to just go, I feel really good. I like what I'm doing right now. And then all of a sudden it was like, I felt myself lift. And in that lifted space, we were able to say, okay, what's the next step? What do we need to do from here? So that's kind of my soul awakening moment. That's the experiential part of, you know, when we get to experience those cycles. Mm-hmm. Do you want to share your tools? Because we have some tangible tools that we want you guys to experience, and things that you can take into your life so that you can bring these teachings into a more grounded experience. You want to share what your tools are?
Yeah, I'd like to share my tools. But before I share my tools, I want to share my soul awakening experience as well. And I would say that my soul awakening experience from yesterday into today, dealing with the same situation, is that in terms of realigning, because the situation happened, I was here and present as well. The way I dealt with it was delving back into knowing the truth about myself. in that there are things that are happening. There are certain events that are taking place, but I am not necessarily a victim of any of those events or any of those circumstances. Events are happening, and they're not happening to me. They're not happening to anybody for that matter. They're happening, period. In knowing that, I can back off a bit, and we'll delve deeper into these little tools and stuff later on as well, but get into who I am. And in knowing that, I clarified it to myself where I was able to step back out and feel good again and not ride the wave for a bit, right? So the tools that we have to share today, right? The law of rhythm again. I'm going to show the pendulum once more to show you one tool I want to share, right? The pendulum is swinging back and forth like this, right? It's guaranteed to do that until the time for that thing runs out, in which case it gets shorter and shorter and then stops. And well, what we call death or whatever that is happens, right? And we'll talk more about that later on too, but there it stops. Now, what we can do is watch at the pendulum swing from here to here and realize that we do not have to take that ride. We can come up to here. By coming up to here, right, on the pendulum or at the root of the pendulum, what we're doing is we're observing. We become observers of the pendulum swing, which is kind of what I was talking about before. But the way of doing that is recognizing that the physical world itself is not constant, it's not consistent, it's not solid. So you don't put any of your trust or any of your, you can love it. Loving it lifts the vibration of everything around you, but you don't invest in it as a secure and solid thing. You don't go putting everything, all your investment into it, right? You invest in a world that sees you as energy, or some people would call it spirit, or however it feels to you comfortable, that recognizes that you're not stuck in the world, stuck in the physical world, is what allows you to rise up to the top of that pendulum and realize that you don't have to ride the effects. Just a state of mind, a change of a state of mind. You're in the mental universe instead of the physical. That's it.
So basically then people are returning
Yes.
to their essence and
Yes.
returning to their soul,
Yes.
their spirit.
Yeah.
And
But I was saving that
remembering.
for later, right?
And remembering who and what you really are, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and it begins with a choice, right?
Uh-huh.
Being able to, in that moment, first recognizing that the law of cycles or rhythm is happening, right? And so I would say, to add on to that, if this is okay, to say for yourself, take note of your own life and notice when these rhythmic things come up. Do you notice certain cycles happening according to the seasons? Are there certain times of the year when you feel a little bit more withdrawn, where you feel a little bit more expanded in the world, where you want to launch certain projects or ideas or businesses, when you feel drawn to make a family, when you feel drawn to up and move, or when you feel like you want to travel? Look at those different times throughout the year and see if there's some consistent patterns. Because I know even in my world, like when the wintertime comes, especially in Canada, it's cold. We tend to withdraw anyway. So it's a really great time for hibernation for me. Whereas when we lived in Mexico, because I didn't have that same fireplace, cozy, warm turtlenecks and everything else, drinking hot tea and hot coffee, it was a different experience. Mexico, it was hot, it was warm. I felt like I was in constant creation mode. So sometimes where we live and where we are physically can also change those laws of rhythm. We can change our own law of rhythm. So if we find that we're in too much of hibernation mode, for example, in Canada, we found that this year it was a really long winter, so I really had to work myself into that conscious place of being the observer, to lift myself out of those laws of rhythm, to say, holy gosh, like this winter is never going to end. I'm going to be in constant hibernation mode. I'm not going to be able to release or launch anything. It was constant inward flow. So I had to really lift myself out of that law of rhythm. So I would say for yourself, look at when there's those regular patterns that are happening in your own world. If you're happy with them, fantastic, keep rolling with it. But if there's certain patterns where you're like, that one's a little bit too long. People go through seasonal affective disorder, SAD or whatever, when they don't get enough sunlight in the winter months. So if that doesn't work for you, then maybe we need to make some changes, right, in life, internally, always, but then maybe the external environment needs to change. Like for us, maybe we need to move to a warmer climate in the winter months, at least for a couple months, so that we can feel like we're in that creation mode, because we both love being active and in creation, right? So it's also looking at where those cycles are, where the patterns are, but then do you fit with those cycles, or do you want to rise above them? And we can rise above them at any point. And then maybe look at, where you feel getting stuck in those rhythms. Because I can get stuck in those rhythms sometimes too, where it's like day in, day out, we're repeating the same thing over and over again, right? I remember when I worked at the Ministry of Health, it was like every day I got up at a specific time, I got home at a specific time. It was so regimented that it wasn't serving me. I like to be more free than that, you know, but everybody's completely different. This is about your journey and about you understanding what works for you, what cycles, what rhythms work for you, and what doesn't. And the stuff that doesn't, you can always change it. You have the power to change anything. And I love that you talk about choice, because it's first recognizing, noticing the patterns that are there, and then making a choice internally to lift out of those cycles on whatever level. And a lot of times it's with the mind first, like you said, right? And the thing that I'd like to add on to that, my tangible tool would be, sometimes we need to change up our own patterns, right? Sometimes I find myself getting stuck in my own ruts, my own rhythmic patterns, where I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And then I'm like, oh gosh, you know, and I'm not feeling so alive. I'm not feeling so vibrant. So then I have to recognize, I don't have to, but I usually do recognize in that moment, I need to change something. I need to change up this pattern because the law of rhythm is happening here. And if I keep on that, it's like being in a hamster wheel, right? Over and over and over and over and over and over and over. What's that saying too? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Insanity, right? And so I think sometimes we get locked into our own life and we get locked into those patterns, that repeating factor. But it's to know that we're not locked into that. We don't have to be hooked into it. It doesn't have to be our constant. We can change it at any time. And it really starts with our choice and then doing something different. For me, that really helps me. Yes, I can make a choice, but then I also have to follow it up with my action to be like, okay, I'm going to change up the scenery today. You know, I'm going to go to the coffee shop, or I'm going to go explore somewhere different, because that lets me see something new. It lets me move into more exploration, which moves me out of those cycles and those rhythms and into something completely different. And then my mind expands, everything expands, and I feel really great when that happens for me too. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that too. I see that the changes in the environment definitely help. And there are inner and outer environments as well. The inner environment is one that we can look on very easily. If things are seeming really challenging in whatever the situation is at a moment, and you know it's in flux, you really know it's in flux, and you're observing that and feeling that, then it's very easy for you. You don't have to go anywhere physically, really, but you can shift to an inner environment and become aware of your inner environment. Some people would use things like light techniques and different stuff like that that we're going to totally discuss later, right? And we have like a whole bunch of cool techniques that you guys will love. But when you get into that and you start using that inner environment as your escape, then it doesn't become necessary for you to leave per se or to do something physical to get the same feeling and then to shift the vibration of whatever is happening. It becomes an instant thing where you can just, okay, so this is not pleasing me right now. Boom. Drop back into that environment. Drop out of the world for a second, in a sense, right? Because you're out of the physical world and being aware of that. And then right then, the change that's necessary, which is an internal change, happens. And then the external world can change for you as well. You'll find something happening different to change whatever that situation is. So it kind of goes both ways, and the inner environment is a lovely way to help in that too.
It is for sure. And then you don't have to go anywhere, right? Because sometimes you can't. Like some days you might not be able to change up your environment. Maybe sometimes there's a certain condition that you're moving through and you can't leave your physical environment. And that's okay. You always can change your internal. I love that you said that, because I think that's really important for people to know. And this is one that I really have to focus my attention there to practice that. Because then for me, it's not so much about the external stimuli again, but the internal world of where I really want to be. And I think, again, it comes back to choice, right? Again, notice, how do you feel? What cycle am I in? What pattern am I repeating? What cyclical patterns or rhythmic patterns are happening around me? What change patterns are happening around me? And then what's my response to that? How am I feeling internally? Am I feeling okay? And part of it is letting go of any judgment too, by the way. Any judgment that you have about yourself, about how you're feeling. Drop the judgment. It will save you so much time and energy, because if you can let go of judgment, you free yourself. And in that moment, you get to just observe, like you were talking about, going into the observer. Can I just observe how I'm feeling? How do I feel right now? What's going on in my mental framework? That puts you immediately, like Gabriel was saying, the pendulum, right? That moves you from this space that's constantly moving up to here. And the observer is just watching. The observer is kind of looking down like this, saying, okay, I can choose to go from one extreme to the other, or And I can drop myself down into this if I want, but then it's going to be like a crazy ass roller coaster or riding a wave that you have no control over and that could swallow you in a moment, or you could ride flying high. You never really know what's going to happen. That's where we feel out of control, I think, right? Yeah. And so you could drop yourself down to here and then you're like, wow, woo, wee, wee, all the time, which could be quite a rush. And I think people get addicted to it sometimes, right? Or you can lift yourself up to this point where we're holding that higher space and we're looking down and we're saying, I see all that's happening and yet I remain calm. I remain still, or I choose to be calm, or I choose to be still, or I choose to ride that wave differently, or maybe I choose not to ride that wave altogether. That's what I'm going to step off of.
That's wonderful, because that's actually the only place that we have any choice if you really think about it as well. I love that you say it that way too, and jumping in on this one again, right? But truly, the only place that we have choice is from up here, because down here, when the world is shifting randomly, what choice is that? Yeah, you could choose if you're going to a party or not, but really, in terms of what's going to happen, all the events that are going to take place in a shifting world, you have basically no say. The only say you have is up here. So it's kind of like having choice or not having choice, technically.
Yeah. And the world will throw all sorts of things at you, right? We know that. We could go about our business and feeling really good. You walk out the door and all of a sudden something happens, right? Like you walk out the door and you park the car at Starbucks and someone backs into your car and that actually happened to us a couple weeks ago. You know, and we could have a negative reaction, which most people would, and we definitely were upset for sure. And then we're like, "What the f just happened?" You know. And I think you even raised.
I ran around the corner, right, to try to get the number plate of the guy who did it, but they already went past the line. They were gone.
So then, what are you going to do, right? So in that moment, you could sit there and dwell on it and be like, "Oh, you know," and let it pull you down. When we were having a really pleasant moment, like literally seconds before. Or we go, okay, well, stuff happens. So what are we going to do? You know, we come back to that space up here and we say, I choose. I choose how to react. I choose how to respond. I choose how I feel. I choose how I think. That's where we have choice on every single level. And I think that's the place that allows us the freedom from the law of rhythm. So it's to know that the law of rhythm is happening all the time, no matter what. As long as you're on this earth, as long as you're in physical existence, you are going to experience the law of rhythm and cycles everywhere.
As long as you see yourself as a being on this earth,
right. And then there's the option for you to have that awareness, to have that awakening, and to lift up out of it, which we always have the choice to do. We can lift up out of anything and everything. So it's acknowledging those cycles, those rhythms that are happening, and then saying, I can allow myself to be affected by them and to be controlled by them, or I can lift up out of them. And that comes with awareness. That comes with awareness of your thoughts, awareness of your feelings, awareness of what works, awareness of what doesn't work, and then making those fine little adjustments, those fine-tuned adjustments, right? Anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
I think we had a wonderful experience today, and I'm happy that we kicked off this first session so awesomely. And to help with the laws, I really feel like we get a chance to relate to you in a way that we may not have been able to otherwise. It's really awesome. And thank you very, very much. Go team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say too, it's interesting that we started out with the law of rhythm, because we have another episode that's going to be coming soon. It's being edited right now, actually. And it was from our trip in India. And we thought that was going to be our very first episode. But you know, there's time that happens between the editing and getting all the pieces and parts together. So we finally broke our own rhythm and cycle today and busted some freedom in there, because we could have waited and waited and waited and waited. And we've been waiting. It's April now. So we've been waiting 4 months for this to kick off and get going. And finally we just said, no way, man, let's just do it. So that's the other power that you have, is you can change any cycle just by choosing it. You can choose today, you can choose tomorrow. And again, you can't get this wrong. You're not going to be struck down if you decide to wait. That revolving door, remember, life is like a revolving door. And when that opening comes, it pauses for a moment. You have an opportunity to jump on board. If you do, great. You're on your next pathway. If you don't, it's okay. It might pass by, but it will come back around again. It's part of your creation. It's part of what you choose. Meaning it's a part of you. So it will come back around again. So if you feel like you've missed out on an opportunity or you've missed out on something, please know that that thing will circle back around again. It might look slightly different, but it will be even better the next time around. Trust in that and know that you have choice every single moment. every time a cycle repeats itself, you have choice. You can choose to bust that cycle and create something new, which is what we're doing today. Or you can continue to be in that space of cyclical movement, of repetitive rhythms, until you decide that, hey, this isn't serving me anymore. Remember, all of it's your choice, and we want you guys to feel empowered.
Indeed. So it is such a pleasure to be here with you today. And it's wonderful to be able to share with you in this way. The whole thing about the laws, the law of rhythm, felt really good. And I feel like you guys are definitely getting it right now. I can feel it happening right now. And this is such a pleasure. We're both really pleased to be with you. Thank you very, very much. And namaste.
Namaste. If you guys have any questions, I just want to mention one last thing. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, please leave it in the video below, because we will get back to you. Either one of us will get back to you, because we want to engage with you guys. This is also about creating conscious community and involvement. We're here to serve. We're here to be of service to you. So please, if you do have any questions or comments, leave it underneath this video and we'll get back to you. And if you want to learn more about who we are, my website is www.tara, T-A-R-A, Antler, A-N-T-L-E-R.com.
And mine is arealizationc.com. So that's A-R-E-A-L-I-Z-A-T-I-O-N, the letter C.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And we look forward to our next episode of Soul Awakening TV.